My name is Richard Caldwell, and I've been sitting on a secret that would shatter my family if it ever came to light. Every Sunday, I watch my son-in-law, Marcus Chen, stride into my modest craftsman home in Portland, wearing suits that cost more than my monthly pension. He kisses my daughter Emma on the cheek, ruffles my grandson Tyler's hair, and talks about his company, Nexus Technologies, like it's some kind of miracle he built with his bare hands. What he doesn't know is that I own 51% of it. I'm 72 years old. I spent 40 years as a patent attorney, the kind nobody writes articles about. I didn't chase Silicon Valley dreams or court venture capitalists. I helped inventors protect their ideas, filed paperwork, and went home at 5:30 every evening to a quiet house and a wife who made the best pot roast in Oregon. When Margaret passed 8 years ago, she left me with a paid-off mortgage, a decent pension, and memories that still make me smile when I'm alone. 7 years ago, Marcus was 28 and desperate. He dropped out of Stanford to build something he called the future of cloud infrastructure. I didn't understand half of what he said during those early dinners. Emma was already pregnant with Tyler, working double shifts as a nurse to keep their tiny apartment in San Jose. Marcus would show up at our door with wild eyes and architectural diagrams that looked like fever dreams. "Richard," he'd said one night, staying late after Emma had gone to bed, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." I'd poured him another whiskey. "Go ahead, son." "I need capital, real capital. The VCs want 60% of the company for $2 million. But I've got something better than what they're offering." He'd slid a folder across my kitchen table. "I've got 3 provisional patents on technology that's going to change how the entire internet handles data distribution. But I need someone who understands IP, law, someone I can trust." I'd opened the folder. The patents were solid, brilliant actually, revolutionary work on distributed processing that made my 30 years of experience sit up and take notice. But what caught my eye was the valuation model. If he was right about the market trajectory, $2 million was highway robbery. "Why me?" I'd asked. "Because you're the only person who's ever looked at my work and asked questions that made me smarter." He'd stared into his glass. "And because Emma trusts you. If I'm going to give someone control of this company, it should be family." I'd made him an offer that night. $1 million, half my retirement savings, for 51% of Nexus Technologies. I'd structured it carefully, using every legal trick I'd learned in 4 decades of practice. The shares would remain in a blind trust. Marcus would have full operational control. I'd never interfere with business decisions. But if he ever tried to sell the company or take it public without family approval, I'd have the final say. "Why 51? He'd asked. "Because if you're going to build something that matters, you need someone in your corner who can't be bought out by the first predator that comes along." I'd slid the contract across the table. "This protects you, Marcus. It protects Emma. It protects my grandson." He'd signed it at 2 in the morning, and we'd never spoken about it again. That was 7 years ago. Nexus Technologies is now valued at $3 billion. Marcus has 2,000 employees across 4 continents. He's been on the cover of Forbes twice. Last year, Amazon tried to acquire the company for $4 billion. Marcus turned them down without consulting me, which was exactly what I wanted. He was building something real. Something that would outlast quarterly earnings reports and shareholder pressure. But the secret has started to weigh on me lately. Not because I want credit. I've never cared about that. It's because I see how the success has changed him. The kid who used to show up to family dinners in jeans and a Stanford hoodie now arrives in a Tesla with a driver. The man who used to play blocks with Tyler on my living room floor now schedules quality time with his son between board meetings. Emma's noticed it too. Last month, she'd sat in my kitchen crying while Tyler was at soccer practice. He's never home, Dad. And when he is, he's always on his phone. I feel like I'm married to a stranger. I'd wanted to tell her then. I'd wanted to explain that I had the power to slow him down, to remind him what mattered. But I'd made a promise. The shares were protection, not control. Marcus had earned every bit of his success, even if I'd provided the safety net that made it possible. Then, 3 days ago, everything changed. Marcus called me directly, something he never does. His voice was different, not the confident CEO voice he uses at investor meetings. It was the voice of the scared kid who'd sat in my kitchen 7 years ago. "Richard, I need to talk to you. In person, tomorrow. Please don't tell Emma." I'd agreed, my heart hammering against my ribs. Had he found out? Had someone leaked the ownership structure? After 7 years of silence, why was he reaching out now? He's coming to my house in exactly 12 hours. I'm sitting at the same kitchen table where we made our original deal, staring at a folder I've kept locked in my safe for 7 years. Inside are the trust documents, the original contracts, and every quarterly report Nexus has filed since its founding. Whatever he wants to discuss, I have a feeling the secret I've carried for 7 years is about to become very public. And I have no idea if our family will survive it. Marcus arrived at 11 in the morning, which told me everything I needed to know about how serious this was. The Marcus I'd watched evolve into a tech mogul didn't take late morning meetings. He conquered continents before most people finished their first coffee. He pulled up in a black sedan, not the Tesla, not the driver. He was alone. That was the second warning sign. I watched him through the kitchen window as he sat in his car for a full 3 minutes, staring at his phone. Or maybe just staring. When he finally got out, he looked like he'd aged 5 years since Sunday dinner. His suit was wrinkled, his tie was loosened. There were shadows under his eyes that makeup couldn't hide. I opened the door before he could knock. "Coffee?" I asked. "Something stronger." It was 11:15 on a Tuesday morning, but I poured us both bourbon. Good bourbon, the kind Margaret used to buy me for Christmas. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "I know," he finally said. My hand tightened around the glass. "Know what?" "Don't, Richard. Please don't make me say it out loud." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "I've known for 3 years." I opened the folder with hands that had started to shake. Inside were copies of the trust documents. My trust documents. The ones that should have been sealed, confidential, protected by layers of legal structure I'd spent weeks building. "How?" I asked. "We were preparing for the Amazon acquisition. Their due diligence team found the ownership structure buried in the corporate filings. They thought it was a poison pill, some kind of anti-takeover mechanism I'd set up." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I had to explain to a room full of lawyers and executives that my father-in-law secretly owned controlling interest in my company. "Marcus, I killed the deal." He looked at me directly for the first time since sitting down. $4 billion. I walked away from $4 billion because I couldn't let them find out the truth. Because I couldn't let Emma find out like that. The weight of what he was saying settled over me like concrete. "You've known for 3 years and you never said anything." What was I supposed to say? "Hey, Dad. Thanks for betting on me when nobody else would. But also I'm furious that you've been pulling strings this whole time." He drained his bourbon. I was angry. I'm still angry. But I also understood why you did it. I refilled both our glasses. "I never pulled any strings, Marcus. You built this company yourself." "Did I?" Or did I build it because I had a safety net that let me take risks nobody else could afford? He stood up, pacing my small kitchen like a caged animal. Do you know what it's like to stand in front of 1,000 employees and tell them we're changing the world, knowing that if I screw up badly enough, my father-in-law can take it all away? That's exactly what the legal documents say, Richard. 51% ownership with a clause that gives you full operational control if I ever violate the terms of the original agreement. He turned to face me. I checked with 5 different attorneys. You could fire me tomorrow if you wanted to. I'd never thought about it that way. The documents were meant to protect him, to protect Emma, to protect Tyler. But from Marcus's perspective, I'd been holding a loaded gun to his head for 7 years. I would never do that, I said quietly. I know, and that's what makes this so complicated. He sat back down, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. 3 years ago, when I found out, I wanted to confront you. I wanted to demand you sign over the shares, prove that I'd earned them. But then I looked at what you actually did with that ownership. He pulled out another document. You never took a dividend, not once. Every penny of profit got reinvested into the company. You never exercised any voting rights. You never made a single demand. You just watched, like you were waiting to see if I'd screw it up. Let me finish. His hands were shaking now. Last year, when SoftBank tried to force me into a merger that would have gutted our R&D budget, I got a call from their lead negotiator. He told me they'd discovered my creative ownership structure and were prepared to expose it publicly if I didn't accept their terms. It would have destroyed us, Richard. It would have destroyed Emma and Tyler. I felt cold. What happened? You happened. Or rather, your lawyer happened. I got a call from someone named Patricia Morrison, your attorney apparently, informing me that any attempt to leverage the ownership structure for hostile purposes would result in immediate legal action and criminal charges for corporate extortion. SoftBank backed off within 48 hours. Patricia. I'd hired her 8 years ago to manage Margaret's estate. I'd told her about the Nexus shares, made her the trustee, and instructed her to protect Marcus's interests without ever revealing my involvement. I'd had no idea she'd actually had to act. You protected me, Marcus said. Even when I didn't know I needed protecting. Even when I probably didn't deserve it. Your family, I said simply. That's why I'm here. He pulled out one final document. Nexus is going public in 6 months. The IPO is valued at $60 billion. Your 51% will be worth approximately $30 billion. The number didn't compute. It was too large, too abstract, like trying to imagine the distance to the sun. I'm offering you a choice, Richard. The choice you never gave me. Marcus spread 3 documents across my kitchen table like a card dealer revealing a hand that would determine both our futures. The morning sun caught the edge of his wedding ring, the simple gold band Emma had chosen because they couldn't afford anything fancier back then. Now he wore a watch that cost more than my first car. Option 1, he said, tapping the first document. You sell me your shares at fair market value before the IPO. Based on current private valuations, that's approximately $18 billion. You walk away clean. No public disclosure. No complications. No one ever knows. I stared at the number. 18 billion. I'd lived 72 years on this planet, and I couldn't conceptualize what that meant. How many lifetimes was that? How many families could that feed? Option 2. He moved to the second document. You retain your shares through the IPO. They vest publicly. The whole world finds out that Marcus Chen's father-in-law is the majority shareholder of Nexus Technologies. The press will have a field day. They'll call me a fraud, They'll say, I'm not a real founder, just a kid playing with daddy's money. Your privacy disappears. Emma's privacy disappears. Tyler grows up as the grandson of a tech billionaire with everything that entails. I thought about Tyler. 9 years old, still young enough to believe his grandfather was just a regular guy who fixed his bicycle and made terrible pancakes on Saturday mornings. What would $30 billion do to that kid? And option 3, I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Marcus's expression shifted. For the first time since arriving, he smiled. It wasn't the practice smile he wore for shareholders. It was the genuine one I'd seen 7 years ago when he'd first held Tyler. Option 3 is the one I actually want you to take. He pushed the third document forward. You transfer your shares into a family trust. Tyler becomes the beneficiary. The shares don't vest until he turns 30. In the meantime, I maintain operational control, but the ownership structure remains private. The trust generates dividends. We're estimating about $200 million annually after the IPO. That money gets distributed to children's hospitals, education programs, and technology initiatives for underprivileged communities. In Tyler's name. I picked up the document with hands that had steadied. This wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. Why? I asked. Why do you want me to choose this option instead of just taking the $18 billion and disappearing? Marcus stood and walked to my kitchen window, the same spot where I'd watched Margaret plant tomatoes every spring for 30 years. 3 years ago, when I found out about the shares, I hired a forensic accountant. I wanted to know if you'd taken anything, if you'd used the ownership for personal gain, anything that would let me justify my anger. He turned back to face me. Do you know what they found? In 7 years, you deposited $1 million into Nexus. You withdrew nothing. Not a single dividend, not a consulting fee, not even reimbursement for the legal fees you paid to set up the trust structure. You spent an additional $100,000 of your own money on Patricia Morrison's retainer. You actually lost money on this deal, Richard. I didn't do it for profit, I said. I know. That's what broke me. He sat back down, and for a moment, he looked like the scared kid who'd sat in this same chair asking for help. I spent 3 years being angry at you for not trusting me enough to tell me the truth. Then I realized you trusted me completely. You trusted me so much that you gave me 51% of my own company and never once tried to collect. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was from 5 years ago, Tyler's 4th birthday party. Marcus was on the floor in my living room, covered in cake frosting, laughing while Tyler smashed a toy car into his expensive suit. Emma was in the background, her face bright with joy. This was taken 3 months after I found out about the shares, Marcus said quietly. I almost didn't come to the party. I was so angry, so hurt by what I saw as your deception. But Emma insisted. And then Tyler tackled me with that car, and you sat down next to us and started making engine noises, and I realized something. He put the phone away. You weren't trying to control me. You were trying to protect Tyler. You were trying to make sure that no matter what happened to Nexus, no matter how successful or unsuccessful I became, your grandson would have a family. A real family, not a corporation. I felt something crack in my chest. For 7 years, I'd carried the weight of this secret like a stone. I'd watched every family dinner, wondering if this would be the night everything came apart. I'd rehearsed 1,000 conversations in my head, trying to find the words to explain why I'd done what I did. Option 3, I said. Tell me more about option 3. Marcus pulled out a tablet and began walking me through the details. The trust would be managed by Patricia Morrison and 2 other trustees we'd select together. Tyler wouldn't know about it until he turned 25. Old enough to understand the responsibility, young enough to still shape his life around it. The annual dividends would fund initiatives we'd choose together, with Emma having final approval on everything. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Why not just set this up without asking?" "Because I spent 3 years being angry that you made a decision about my future without consulting me," Marcus said. "I won't make the same mistake with you. This is your money, Richard. Your investment. You get to decide what happens to it." "It's not about the money," I said again. "I know. It's about family. That's why I'm asking you to choose." We sat in my kitchen for 3 hours, going through every detail of option 3, until the afternoon light started slanting through the windows at that particular angle that meant the day was disappearing. Marcus had long since shed his suit jacket. His tie was on the back of a chair. We were working through our 3rd pot of coffee, and the bottle of bourbon was half empty. "There's one problem with option 3, I said, setting down my reading glasses. "We can't do this without telling Emma." Marcus had been scrolling through projections on his tablet. His hand froze. "Richard, no. Listen to me." I stood up, my joints protesting after hours of sitting. "Your mother lied to me once. Just once, in 43 years of marriage. She'd been feeling chest pains for 2 months and didn't tell me because she didn't want me to worry. By the time she finally admitted it, the cancer had spread too far." I walked to the window, looking out at Margaret's garden. The tomatoes were dead now. I'd never learned how to keep them alive the way she had. I spent the last 6 months of her life wondering what would have been different if she'd told me the truth. If we'd had more time. If I could have fought with her instead of just watching her slip away. "This isn't the same thing," Marcus said. "Isn't it? You've known about this for 3 years. 3 years of family dinners where Emma wondered why you seemed distant. 3 years of her thinking you were choosing the company over her, when really you were carrying a secret that was eating you, alive." I turned to face him. "How long are you planning to keep lying to my daughter?" His jaw tightened. "I'm trying to protect her." "From what?" "From knowing that her father believed in her husband when nobody else would. From understanding that family means making sacrifices for each other." I shook my head. "Emma's stronger than you think, Marcus. She's Margaret's daughter. She can handle the truth." "What if she can't?" His voice cracked. "What if she looks at everything we've built and sees a lie? What if she thinks I'm a fraud who never would have made it without her father's money?" There it was. The real fear. Not that Emma would be angry at me, but that she'd lose respect for him. I sat back down across from him. 7 years ago, you came to me because you needed capital, yes. But you also came because you needed family. You needed someone who believed in you when you were too scared to believe in yourself." I pushed the option 3 documents toward him. "Emma needs to know that her family did that. She needs to know that when you were terrified and desperate, you didn't run to venture capitalists or angel investors. You ran to the people who loved you." Marcus stared at the documents. "What if she's angry that you didn't tell her?" "Then she'll be angry. I can live with that." I pulled out my phone and looked at my daughter's contact photo, a picture from her wedding day, her smile so much like Margaret's, it hurt. "What I can't live with is watching my daughter wonder why her marriage is falling apart while we sit here shuffling papers and talking about billions of dollars she doesn't even know exist." "She thinks we're struggling," Marcus said quietly. "Last month, she asked me if we needed to pull Tyler out of private school to save money. I told her the company was going through a rough patch and we needed to tighten our belts. I've been manufacturing fake financial pressure to explain why I've been so stressed." I felt my anger rise. "You've been lying to her about money while sitting on an $18 billion ownership stake?" I didn't know how to tell her the truth without revealing everything. He stood up, pacing again. "How do I say, actually, honey, we're about to be worth $30 billion? But I can't tell you how I know that because your father secretly owns my company and I've been hiding it from you for 3 years. You start with, "I'm sorry," I said. And then you tell her everything. Tonight. Richard. Tonight, Marcus, or I will. We stared at each other across my kitchen table. 7 years of secrecy, 3 years of deception, all coming to a head over cold coffee and the ghosts of promises we'd made to protect each other. "Okay," he finally said, "but I need you there." We tell her together. I called Emma at 4:30, told her I needed to see her and Tyler tonight, that it was important. She heard something in my voice, that mother's instinct she'd inherited from Margaret, and agreed immediately. She'd dropped Tyler at her friend Sarah's house and come straight over. "Is it your heart?" she asked, worry bleeding through the phone. "Dad, if something's wrong, I'm fine, sweetheart. I just need to talk to you and Marcus about something. It's overdue." Marcus spent the hour before Emma arrived making phone calls. To Patricia Morrison, putting her on standby. To his CFO, clearing his schedule for the next 48 hours. To someone I didn't recognize, arranging for additional security at Emma's house. "Security?" I asked. "If this goes badly, if she's angry, if she wants to leave." He couldn't finish the sentence. "I just want to make sure she and Tyler are safe. That you're safe." At 5:45, Emma's Prius pulled into my driveway. I watched her get out, check her phone, smooth her scrubs. She'd come straight from the hospital, still wearing her nurse's uniform. She looked tired. She looked worried. She looked exactly like Margaret had looked 30 years ago when I'd had to tell her my law firm was folding and we might lose the house. Margaret had taken my hand, smiled and said, "Well, I guess we'll figure it out together." I prayed Emma had inherited more than just her mother's smile. Emma didn't sit back down. She stood at the head of the table where Margaret used to stand when she was making her point about something, hands on her hips, chin up, eyes clear and direct. My daughter had inherited more than just her mother's smile. She'd inherited that steel core that looked like softness until you tested it. "I'm going to tell you what's going to happen," she said. "And you're both going to listen without interrupting, because I've listened to 7 years of lies, and I think I've earned the right to speak." Marcus and I both nodded. We looked like children called before the principal. "First, Dad." She turned to me. "I'm furious with you. Not because you invested in Marcus's company. Not because you wanted to protect our family. I'm furious because you assumed I couldn't handle the truth. You assumed I was too fragile or too worried or too something to be trusted with the reality of our situation." The words hit like physical blows. "Emma," I said, "don't interrupt." Her voice was sharp. "You watched me stress about money. You watched me pick up extra shifts. You watched me tell Tyler we couldn't afford Disney World this year. And the whole time, you knew none of it was real. You let me live in a fiction because you decided it was better than trusting me with the truth." She was right. God help me. She was absolutely right. "I don't know if I can forgive that," she continued. "Not right now. Maybe not for a long time. But here's what I do know. You did it because you love us. You did it because you wanted to give Marcus a chance without strings attached. You did it because that's what Mom would have wanted you to do." She pulled out Margaret's chair and sat down in it. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. Mom used to tell me that family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up when it matters. Emma's voice softened slightly. "You showed up for Marcus when nobody else would. You showed up with your retirement savings and your legal expertise and your trust. That counts for something." I felt my throat tighten. "Thank you. I'm not done." She turned to Marcus. We need to talk about what happens next because right now, I'm not sure I know who you are." Marcus looked like he'd been gutted. "Emma, I'm still me. I'm still the guy you married. Are you?" Because the guy I married told me everything. The guy I married didn't keep $3 billion secrets. The guy I married didn't let me work myself half to death for no reason. She pulled out her phone and pulled up something I couldn't see. Last month, I picked up a shift on my day off. Tyler had a soccer game. I missed it because I thought we needed the money. You were in Seattle at a conference? Do you remember what you told me when I called to apologize to Tyler? Marcus's face went ashen. I told you not to worry about it, that Tyler understood. You told me that sacrifice was part of building something great, that Tyler would understand someday why we had to make hard choices. Emma's hand was shaking as she held the phone. I have a text message from you from that day. Do you want me to read it out loud? No, Marcus whispered. I do. She read anyway. This is what it takes to build a future for our family. Tyler will thank us someday when he sees what we've accomplished. Except there was no we, was there? There was just you, sitting on billions of dollars, watching me sacrifice time with our son because you were too ashamed to tell me the truth. The silence that followed was crushing. I wanted to say something to defend Marcus, to explain that he'd been trying to protect her too. But Emma had asked us not to interrupt, and I disrespected her enough for one lifetime. Here's what's going to happen, Emma said, her voice steady again. Dad, you're going to give me copies of all the legal documents. Every contract, every amendment, every clause. I'm going to read every word. I'm going to understand exactly what you built and why. She turned to Marcus. And you're going to go home. You're going to pack a bag. You're going to stay somewhere else for a week while I figure out if I want to be married to someone who thinks I'm too weak to handle reality. Emma, please, Marcus started. 1 week, she said firmly. That's not a divorce. That's not an ultimatum. That's me needing space to think without you apologizing every 5 minutes or trying to explain why lying to me for 3 years was somehow for my own good. Where will I go? I don't care. A hotel, Dad's house, your office, anywhere that isn't our house. She stood up. I need time to process this. I need time to be angry without you watching me. I need time to figure out who I married. Marcus looked at me desperately, but I shook my head. Emma was right. She deserved space. She deserved time. She deserved to make this decision on her own terms. What about Tyler? Marcus asked. Tyler stays with me. You can have video calls at bedtime. You can take him for ice cream on Saturday. But he sleeps in his own bed, in his own house, with a mother who isn't going to lie to him about why his father suddenly moved out. What will you tell him? The truth. Emma walked to the door. I'm going to tell him that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and need time to fix them. I'm going to tell him that Daddy loves him very much, but made some choices that hurt Mommy's feelings. I'm going to tell him exactly as much truth as a 9-year-old can handle, which is apparently more than you thought I could handle. She pulled out her car keys. I'm going to pick up Tyler. Dad, send me those documents tonight. Marcus, I want you out of the house by the time we get home. Emma, I said, I love you. She paused at the door. I know you do, Dad. That's the only reason I'm still speaking to either of you. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded final. Marcus and I sat in the silence she left behind. After a moment, he started to cry. Not the careful, controlled tears of a CEO managing his image. The messy, desperate tears of a man who just realized he might lose everything that actually mattered. What do I do? He asked. I thought about Margaret, about the months after her diagnosis when we'd had to face the truth we'd both been avoiding, about how the honesty, even when it hurt, had given us something precious in that final time together. You give her space, I said. You respect her choice, and you pray that she's as strong as her mother was. 6 days passed. 6 days of Marcus calling me every morning from the Marriott downtown where he'd been staying. 6 days of Emma sending me legal questions at midnight, working through documents after Tyler went to bed. 6 days of me sitting in my kitchen wondering if I'd destroyed my family to protect it. On the 7th day, Emma called. Can you come to the house, both of you? Tonight at 7. Marcus arrived at my door at 6:30, looking like he'd aged a decade in a week. His suit was rumpled. He hadn't shaved. He was clutching a folder like it was a life preserver. Did she tell you anything? He asked before I could even say hello. Just that she wanted to talk to both of us. I wrote her a letter. 12 pages. I explained everything. I told her about option 3, about the trust for Tyler, about how we could structure it so she has final approval on everything. He was talking fast, desperate. I told her I'd step down as CEO if she wanted. I told her I'd sell the whole damn company if it meant saving our marriage. Did you mean it? He stopped, looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. Every word. I spent 7 years building Nexus, but I spent 10 years building a life with Emma. There's no comparison. We drove to Emma's house in silence. Marcus's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, but I'd done enough lying. Emma answered the door wearing jeans and one of Marcus's old Stanford hoodies. No makeup, hair in a ponytail. She looked exhausted and real, and more like her mother than I'd ever seen. Tyler's at Sarah's for the night, she said. I wanted to have this conversation without worrying about little ears. We sat in the living room, not the kitchen this time. The formal space where they entertained guests and held birthday parties and pretended everything was perfect. Emma sat in the armchair. Marcus and I took the couch, like defendants awaiting a verdict. Emma pulled out a laptop. I've spent the last week doing research. I talked to 3 different attorneys, not Patricia Morrison, Dad, before you ask. I wanted independent advice. I also talked to a financial planner, a tax specialist, and someone from the SEC about disclosure requirements for beneficial ownership. She opened the laptop. Here's what I learned. Option 3, the family trust, is actually brilliant. It protects Tyler from the money until he's old enough to handle it. It generates sustainable charitable giving that can make a real difference. It keeps the ownership structure private, which protects Marcus's reputation and the company's stability. Marcus leaned forward. Emma, I'm not finished. She pulled up a document. But option 3 has a flaw, a major flaw that neither of you apparently noticed. I felt my stomach drop. What flaw? It doesn't include me. She turned the laptop so we could see the screen. Look at the trustee structure. Patricia Morrison, Dad as the primary trustee, Marcus as an advisory trustee, and some lawyer from your firm as the backup. Where am I in this structure? Marcus and I looked at each other. In all our planning, all our careful legal maneuvering, we'd somehow forgotten to include the most important person. We thought, I started. You thought I'd be happy being consulted? Being kept in the loop? Being the wife who gets to approve charitable donations? Emma's voice was steady, but I could hear the edge underneath. That's not good enough. She pulled out her own document. Here's my counter-proposal. Option 4. We restructure the entire thing. Dad transfers his shares to a new family trust. But this trust has 3 equal trustees, Dad, Marcus, and me. Any major decision requires at least 2 of us to agree. The charitable giving requires unanimous consent. And the structure includes mandatory family meetings quarterly where we review everything together. She looked at both of us. No more secrets. No more protecting me from reality. No more decisions made by men in kitchens while I'm at work saving lives and wondering why we can't afford piano lessons. I think that's perfect, I said immediately. Marcus was nodding, tears streaming down his face. Yes. God, yes. Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm not done, she said again. There's one more condition. We waited. Marcus, you need therapy. Real therapy, not just talking to your executive coach about stress management. You need to work through why you felt ashamed of accepting help, why you equated needing support with being a failure. Because I can't build a life with someone who thinks partnership is weakness. I'll start tomorrow, Marcus said. Today. Right now. Whatever you need. I need you to understand that I married you when you were a dropout with a crazy idea and $50,000 in student debt. I didn't marry you for money. I married you because you were brilliant and kind, and you made me laugh. The company doesn't change that. The billions don't change that. But the lying does. She closed the laptop. I love you, Marcus. I've loved you since you showed up at my dorm room with flowers you stole from the quad because you couldn't afford to buy them. But love isn't enough if there's no trust. So here's my choice. We do option 4, with therapy, with full transparency, with me as an equal partner in every decision. Or we do option 1, you buy out Dad's shares, and we have a very different conversation about our future. Marcus didn't hesitate. Option 4, I choose option 4, I choose us. Emma turned to me. Dad? Option 4, I said. I should have included you from the beginning. Yes, you should have. She stood up. Marcus, you can come home, but you're sleeping in the guest room for another week. We're going to rebuild trust slowly. Marcus practically leaped to his feet. Thank you. Emma, thank you. I swear I'll never... Don't make promises you can't keep, she interrupted. Just be honest. That's all I've ever wanted. She walked to the door, then turned back. And Dad, Mom would have been furious with you for hiding this. But she also would have understood why you did it. I'm working on understanding too. 3 months later, we filed the paperwork for the new trust structure. Emma, Marcus, and I sat in Patricia Morrison's office, signing documents that restructured $30 billion around a principle Margaret had taught me 40 years ago. Family means being honest, even when it's hard. The IPO happened 6 weeks after that. Nexus Technologies went public at a valuation of $62 billion. The press called it the tech event of the decade. They wrote profiles of Marcus, the self-made founder who'd revolutionized cloud infrastructure. They never knew about the $1 million I'd invested. They never knew about the 51%. They never knew about the kitchen table conversations that had built the foundation for everything that followed. And that was fine with me. On the night of the IPO, Emma, Marcus, Tyler, and I had dinner at my house. Not at some fancy restaurant. Not at the company celebration. Just family, eating Margaret's pot roast recipe that I'd finally learned to make properly. Grandpa, Tyler said, Dad says you're the smartest person he knows. I looked at Marcus, who smiled. It's true. Why? Tyler asked. I thought about the answer, about the $1 million bet, about the secret I'd kept, about the daughter who'd saved us all by demanding the truth. Because I knew when to ask for help, I said, and because I married your grandmother, who was smarter than all of us. Tyler seemed satisfied with that answer. He went back to his pot roast. Emma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. 3 months hadn't fixed everything. We were still rebuilding, still learning to trust, still figuring out how to be a family that told each other the truth. But we were doing it together. And that, I thought, was worth more than all the billions in the world. If you think honesty is the foundation of family, hit that subscribe button. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever kept a secret to protect someone you loved? Would you have chosen option 4? Let me know, and thank you for being here.